And happy Wednesday to the world out there. And gentlemen, happy Hawkscast Podcast Day.
Good day, good day.
Happy podcast.
And not only do we have the podcast today, we have the NFL Draft. I mean, it feels so long since we've had a draft, and this draft is... Do we know what the format's going to be? It's in Cleveland. Is it a regular draft, not a virtual draft?
It's like hybrid, right? Some people are going to be there by Zoom. So, yeah. It's a hybrid, it feels like. But I think I saw 15 people there and 45 people going to connect to it. Like, I'm talking about athletes. Connect to it by remote. And I think, teams have representatives there, but I'm not sure they're all, their whole team's there.
I'm not going to lie. I found out this past Sunday that the draft was this week, so I'm wholly unprepared.
Nice.
Well, if you get a chance, there's a couple posts on hawkscast.net written by one Mr. Ross here about the draft. You should definitely go check it out and read about it, because there's some good stuff in there that I know I am totally unprepared for. So that's my holy grail for the next few days.
What's that web address again, Sam?
It is hawkscast.net.
I'll have to check it out.
You should check it out. We've got a new website, new home for the podcast. It's a lot of fun. We'll talk about it a little bit more later. But, gentlemen, we're in the height of the offseason with the NFL draft. The Seahawks don't have a lot of draft capital. I mean, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But it's been pretty quiet, I feel. You know, we had the podcast last week to kick off the offseason, talk about a lot of these acquisitions, but we're getting for the draft. Are you excited? Zeb woke up from a slumber because he, like probably a lot of people, didn't realize the draft was tomorrow, but are you guys excited now that you know the draft is coming?
Yeah, I'm ready for it. I'm in. Let's do it. Is it tomorrow?
Yeah, so first round is Thursday. At, I believe it's 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, the first round only. And then Friday, it starts at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and that runs from 4 until whenever the second and third round finish. And then rounds 4 through 7 are on Saturday, and that starts super early in the morning.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm in. I had to work all 3 days. It's beautiful.
Awesome.
Ross,
mixed.
You put a lot of work into the draft. I mean, you're feeling a little mixed about this?
I didn't put as much work as I did last year and the year before, and I got to tell you, it's hard to get motivated when, I put together every year the first round draft, the whole, every team's first round pick. And this year we don't have one, and I cannot really express how, demotivating that is when you're trying to put it together. Because usually it's you kind of have a couple of people in your mind. I'm just kind of curious, trying to be objective, doing it very objectively, but still kind of curious whether any of the people I like may fall, may be available. And this time, there's no hope, because not only do we not have a first round pick, we don't have a second round pick. We
have a second round pick.
Sorry, we don't have a second round pick. Sorry, we don't have a third round. Yeah, we don't have a third round pick, so we don't have even ammo to even move up into the first round. There's no hope. Yeah, we have a first pick in the second round of 56. Second half of the first round, it's a waste, that pick. I mean, it's not good. It's not good. So I'm excited in the sense, there's a little bit of the ego. When you put together a mock, you kind of want to count how many things you get right, and you make up your own scoring system. I didn't have it exactly right, but I had the position, or shift everything by one because somebody at number 4 picks something weird and it just destroys the whole board. But you kind of keep score a little bit, how close were you to, and then I often take a few notes as well as I want to save my I told you so's. Your friend office chose somebody I was wrong, but I was actually right. You should have chosen who I wanted. So there's a little bit of game playing there with my mind, and I like that, but it's a bit different, watching the first round, knowing that it's not going to have anything to do with your team, right? So, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, that is our cross to bear, right? You have a roster that is filled with a lot of veterans. You have a lot of people you signed up. You don't necessarily have a lot of moving parts that you're trying to tinker with every single time.
But you'd like more than 3 picks.
Yeah, I think you would. But let's get into that. So the 2021 NFL Draft is here, and while the Seahawks have to wait an agonizing 55 picks before they get to their first, with the 56th overall on Friday, we're here to talk about the draft. This is the lowest draft capital the Seahawks have had in the entire Pete and John regime. I mean, we've gone rounds where they've drafted 3 people in one round multiple times. But that number, 3 draft picks, that's apparently also tied for the lowest in draft capital in NFL history. Pete's going around. He and John had a press conference today. Shout out to Birdfinger for posting that on the website. He was talking that our first round pick and our third round pick, it's Jamal Adams. It's also going to be our 2021 first round pick as well.
Get a lot of mileage out of that.
Yeah, so we have a lot of things we need to get out of that, but this is a Hawkscast podcast and brought to you by the Hawkscast forum at hawkscast.net. And Zeb, I'm going to jump into it. We kind of talked about it a little bit, but I need as much love as you're willing to give. Topic number 1: can you be excited for the Seahawks draft with such low draft capital?
I mean, it's obviously tougher. I think the possibilities of like a blockbuster trade made it a little bit more exciting, but the Seahawks have definitely kind of doubled down on the idea that Russell's not going anywhere. So you kind of feel like at this point anything could happen, obviously, but we're going in with 3 picks, and those are what we're going to have to work with in this draft, whatever we do with them. So, like I said, I knew the draft was coming up soon. I knew we were getting there, but I really didn't know it was this week until just a couple of days ago. So that's a pretty obvious tell that I'm not necessarily as excited as I normally would be. And yeah, that's probably a big part of it, is just the lack of capital.
Do you also feel, because this team is such a veteran team, that rookies just don't have as much interest as they have in previous years? Because we've had drafts where like the rookie class has done absolutely nothing. I feel like the last 3 years, we've seen good returns on rookies, but there have been stretches where like the rookie class has not been very exciting. Like, do you feel like that has caused any impact as you not realizing that the draft was coming up?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we have a lot of positions where it wouldn't be nice to get a good young upgrade. I like a lot of the stuff we got, and I like what we've done this offseason. But obviously, if you could get a young prospect that could come in and compete for playing time and potential starting position, that's fantastic. But we've seen over the recent years that that just doesn't happen all that much here. So yeah, it's not the most fun part about Seahawks football these days.
What do you think would be more surprising, a trade up or a trade down? Not of what you think will happen, but what would get you excited if you saw?
I mean, a trade up would be super exciting. Like, it just seems like such an improbability. If we were to make some kind of move like that, it would be very exciting to see what they were going to do. A trade down, you kind of almost have to expect it at this point. It wouldn't surprise me that 2 turns into 3 or 4, 4s or 5s or something like that. So that's kind of expected. But a big jump up to grab somebody would be obviously pretty exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Ross, what about you? Are you excited for this draft? I mean, you said you've put a little less study or homework into this drafting year than previous years. Is that because the Seahawks only come in with 3 picks?
What's weird is I think that it's true of a lot of people. So I'm not like a huge draft guru guy. So when I start my research every year, there's a few people I go to first that kind of give me some parameters or some clues, initial hints. I try not to look at mocks because I want to really have an objective viewpoint. But I do have some people that kind of I trust their numbers, I trust their basic insights, and a lot of people who I usually go to every year, some of the people either didn't have as much out there this year, or didn't have anything at all. They've just stopped. And I don't know if that's like because most of them are sort of Seahawk biased sources or based sources. So maybe they're also feeling the whole there's no capital, so it's not worth investing 60, 80 hours this year. Maybe it's a cumulative thing with like, a beat down of the, people's anxieties for the past 14 months from COVID-19 seems to be playing an effect on like some people just in their general life. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's signs lots of other people aren't that excited. On the other hand, there's different perspectives you can take, and I'm going to use a weird example. When I was a kid, I'm not a big baseball guy, obviously. We've talked about that before, but there was a video game I liked that you were, it was like a closing pitcher. You were like a closer, or relief pitcher. It was called Relief Pitcher, and it would kind of randomly generate a situation, and then you come in and you got to pitch your way out of it. I sort of look at and that was interesting to me. I liked that. You were in a predicament that was no fault of your own, and you just got to work your magic and get out of it. I sort of like this challenge that's in front of the Seahawks front office, and I'm excited to see how they'll face it. You got just these 3 picks. You've got more needs than 3 picks. Everybody's assuming you're going to like trade down. As I've just mentioned, that's what we always do. But here's the thing. When you trade down, you're only going to get depth. We're already at 56. If you trade down, you're probably saying you're not going to get an impact player this year. So I'm not sure it's even a given they're necessarily going to trade it. I did a mock. People don't look at it that way. Like I did a mock with no trades, and people didn't even look at it as much because they always assume, no, there's going to be trades. There's going to be trades. There's always trades. There has to be trades, right? I don't know, because you move down from 56. I think like the top 80 have impact players. But after 80, you're talking depth, you're talking role players, you're talking, But I think we actually are in the situation now. We kind of need impact players, and I think I'm not sure it's as. I still think it's like a 70% chance we move down, but I don't think it's as much of a lock as a lot of people think. I do think, and this is going to be weird, we may move back in. Next year we have 2 4th-rounders, and I feel like the Seahawks are kind of all in on this year. And we'll talk a little bit about the reasoning later. I feel like they're definitely, and I also think they look at this draft weird, but I do think so there's a certain number of people who, if they fall to the 5th, we may trade our 2nd, 4th, which is our pick, next year to get back into the 5th round. I'm calling that now. A trade back in from our using next year's capital.
I could see that happening. Well, what about you? Do you think would you find it more interesting? Because that would be a trade back in, and that would be technically a trade up from a 2022 pick to a 2021 pick. Would that get you more excited if that's something the Seahawks did?
Yeah, because it also means that there's a reason, right? It means like there's a guy they really value. I've identified one. There's a cornerback I've listed in my draft. You'll have to go look it up. That I have them taking in the 3rd after a trade back, I think. There's a chance that dude may fall. He may fall to the 5th. I see a couple. I've seen, comparing later. I see a couple mocks where he falls to 146, 150. If he falls there and they traded back in, I'd be super stoked. There's also a couple. There's a tight end I looked at. There's a linebacker I looked at. There's a couple of people that I think have chances of falling to the 5th. That would be really good value and also kind of slot in nicely with the Seahawks. And so, if you see it on the ticker that they've traded it, into the 5th round, and that's the 5th round is also like that's our bread and butter. That's where we do really well. 5th, 6th, that's awesome. So, it would get my heart racing a little bit. We're on day 3, and you see them trade up stuff to get into the 5th again. I'd be excited for that. That's stupid to get that excited for a 5th rounder, but you take what you can get this year, right?
Yeah. I think kind of like both of you. I feel like everything has snuck up on us because it's almost the end of April. The NFL draft is here, and I kind of feel like no time has changed because we're all kind of stuck at home. We're not really seeing a lot change outside of rearranging maybe furniture in the house because, we're supposed to be safe and all that. So I definitely feel that has impacted my ability to get excited for the draft because we don't know if we're going to see these people live. We don't know what the situation is going to hold. the Seahawks and Ross, you know this as well. The Seahawks have said, "Hey, we're collecting money for season tickets, so pay up." We don't know if we're going to be able to see games. So there's a lot of things that
that's so awkward, isn't it? Hey, give us money, but
yeah,
we'll let you later if it means anything.
Yeah. And I feel like that has added to the fact that, like, I'm going through a lot of motions in certain regards, but I'm not seeing any movement. I'm not seeing traction. I'm not seeing progress that I would see normally. And because of that, it's harder to feel excited. Like, I feel like when something comes out, whether it's a show, a video game, a movie, even sports, like, I feel like everything has always snuck up on me. There's not really that build-up anticipation because it's just kind of like, oh yeah, I can't believe that it's already the end of April and now we're going to head into May and now here's the draft. Like, I feel that's what has impacted my outlook on the draft, when normally I think it's fun, it's exciting, like, you know, but just like when it rolls around in May, the NFL schedule is going to get announced and we're going to see our 17 game regular season schedule that I'm going to have a really hard time with because 16 was just so perfect. And now 17, it's a prime number. I dig prime numbers, but man, 8 and 9, 9 and 8 is your record. It just doesn't feel right.
17 is going to mess with so many people's OCD so bad.
Oh yeah, I think really they need to just bump it up to 18 and get it over with. Like,
yeah,
pretty much. but like both of you, I think we all expect the draft to pan out where they will fall back. Birdfinger chiming in says he really misses the combine. You know, that's another thing I feel like has not really been talked about. You know, usually online I hear more about the combine, I hear about people's 40 times, I hear about, you know, some gym rat, I hear about some freak athlete. I don't know anything about the upcoming class. I don't watch college football for reasons I won't get into, but I don't know any of these upcoming players. Like, I know Trevor Lawrence. That's like the one person I know in this draft. And that's because everyone talked about him last year. So I feel like I'm falling to the same boat as both of you are, is that, yes, I know the draft is here. Tomorrow when it starts showing up and we see the results, I'll be excited about it. But I'm just not as hyped up as I think I would have been if this were quote-unquote normal years.
What would get you hyped? Could anything get you hyped at this point?
You know what would get me hyped? And it would be for the wrong reasons. If they made a crazy trade that would just piss off like 90% of the fans. Like, if they mortgaged like the 2023 first round and got into the 2021 first round. Like, I think that would get me excited, but I think it's probably the wrong play.
I mean, 2023 first round will probably only get you a third round. Usually they give a year later.
Based upon the on the point scale that what, I can't remember his name, the old Cowboys coach that everyone kind of uses as like the metric to rank value. Yeah, Jimmy Johnson. Yeah, Jimmy Johnson's metric. I mean, people say that's not true, but anyone who's ever looked at a trade uses that as like the first thing they base it off of, and it's like, these numbers really, really check out. So
I mean, it's been modified a lot. I think most teams have modified it, but it's definitely the base. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's something that I would get really excited for. I don't think it's a smart play because, like you said, the return on trading a future first round 2 years away to get into the first round, you'd have to pay so much, and I think the NFL limits how far out you can trade a first round pick anyway. So.
The other thing is, I don't think the Seahawks trust this draft at all. And that's why I don't think there's many moves. I don't think they feel comfortable. Like, no combine. Some people opted out. Some people had a 4-game schedule. Some people had a 10-game schedule. There's a quarterback. Which one is it? I forget. But whoever was coming off the injury has played one game in 540 days or something. He's played one game, 540 days.
There's an article on Seahawks.com by John Boyle that talked about the scouts, and in the draft last year, they mentioned that this might be the last time they're all in the same room. And normally there's a downtime between the college season and the regular season and the draft. And in that article, they basically said they took 0 time off because all they could do is just look at available video and tape, and that required them just to review what was available sometimes in 2018 and 2019. and not rely on what was available in 2020. So I think that's a huge impact as well, like not knowing if what you're seeing is really what you're seeing because you haven't been able to see progress or people plateauing or people regressing. And I think that's a huge concern when you're talking about the investment teams put into these players. So
the other issue is, and this is, I mean, I mentioned a second ago, when you have the opt-out people, I definitely don't think you should hold it against them as far as like, oh, that, you know, their heart's not in the game. Like that's bullshit. Everybody has a right to opt out, and they should have if they wanted to. But I think you can. This is hard to say. It counts against them in a different way, and that's when you step away from a game like football for a year, and you haven't played for a year, and you come back. Maybe you still run the same 40 time. Maybe your cones time is the same, or whatever. But if you want to call it the eye of the tiger or the zone or whatever you call it, a lot of times people don't mentally come all the way back. There's something that they just lose in the process. The only, you know, I was struggling when I was preparing. I was trying to find comparisons. I talked to Tony about this. I went back to like the Vietnam War, and the Vietnam War was like a lot of people like lost a year and they came back. And this isn't people who were injured or people who came back with PTSD. It's just a lot of times when people take a year off and they come back, they don't come back. Not every single person, but some people just don't come back.
yeah,
You won't know, and you don't know. And so there are going to be people holding against that. That's going to be a little bit controversial because people are going to say, oh, well, that's not fair. You're holding the fact that he didn't play for his safety out. It's not that. Is that dude going to be all the way back? You know, football's the closest thing we have to sort of warriors in society now. And don't say the U.S. Army is, because the U.S. Army are soldiers. Soldiers are not necessarily warriors. It's not the same thing. Warriors is kind of like a lifestyle, a culture. Soldiers are soldiers. It's a profession. No, it's. I mean, it sounds like. I mean, well,
no. I'm on the track. I
we'll
fully
talk
agree
about
with
it.
you.
It's a completely different thing. Like tribal society warriors who grew up and lived that way versus somebody who trains how to shoot a gun and run and whatever. It's different. Like, so when you take that warrior time out and then all of a sudden you go back in, I don't know if everybody's going to come back mentally. Have the same eye of the tiger edge. So I don't know. And I don't
think
know.
That's a fair question to ask though, because again, like as I mentioned, these teams are investing millions and millions of dollars, not just in the player itself, but all it takes to keep that player at a high capacity. Perfect example is Darrell Taylor was the second-round pick that the Seahawks traded up to acquire last year. He has not played it down for Seattle. He hasn't been able to come to practice. He has been on PUP the entire year. And he was a player that John kind of talked about really, really heavily that is going to make an impact this year. So hopefully that's something we'll see. We are going to move along, though. We are going to talk about topic number 2. And Ross, I want to get your opinion on this. Does the front office get credit for Jamal Adams, Carlos Dunlap, and Gabe Jackson for their draft grades? So Jamal Adams cost at least, I don't know the exact number, but it's 3 picks, the 2 first-rounders, and then a third. So our 2020 first and third have been spent on Jamal Adams. Carlos Dunlap cost us our 7th rounder and he played for us in 2020. And then in the offseason, Seattle traded its 5th round pick for Gabe Jackson, who has signed an extension with Seattle. Does the front office get credit for that when we evaluate this draft class?
I don't know, because yeah, you do, but you don't. I mean, yeah, you turned it into that, so you get that. It gets very, very esoteric, and I mean, if that makes you feel better about it, I guess. I just kind of wipe it out mentally. I just kind of just take it off the board either way. I mean, there's some interesting things like when you say you got Carlos Dunlap for a 7th rounder, even if he only ever plays a season and a half for us, great, cool. I mean, at that level of production, you would have you very unlikely would have got that out of the 7th round. So that's a better use of the 7th round pick. Although then you have to take into consideration, you know, salary, blah blah blah. For me, it's just a too complicated of a thing. I don't work it that way. I don't just like pencil it in and go, well, that was Adams, so it's worth it. It's a bridge too far. It's apples to oranges because it's too many moving parts. Yeah, Adams is better, and the first round's a crapshoot. But how much are we going to have to pay for Adams? And if you get 2 rookie guys at first round, you get 5 years at cheap salary. You get 5 years of control on them. Adams, we're sitting here panicking because he may not sign an extension. So sometimes it's really straightforward and you can just do that. Late round people, the Jackson maybe, but with things like Jamal Adams, the trade, I mean, if it makes you feel better about it, go ahead and do it. I don't think it's a straightforward equivalent like that in my own mind, because it's also made complications with salary cap and everything, right? For me, I don't do that, but I see why some people do, because it's also weird to say, look at the draft and go, oh, this is they got nothing. Well, no, we did other things with it, but I don't. Maybe I'm not even just that interested in credit, I don't know. It's hard for me to answer, as you can tell. I'm struggling. I want to hear what Zep says.
Well, I mean, I mostly agree with you, Ross. I mean, it's a lot of things to consider, but I will say that the two sides of my opinion. The one is, if you just put down on paper the draft pick and what you got for it, then yeah, you can count those things. And it's not really fair. Like, if they're saying Adams is our first round pick this year, if we had just traded this year's first round pick for him, then fine. But obviously we put a lot more into it than that. So there's a lot of gray area there. The other side of it is, what are we grading? Are we grading the haul, or are we grading how well the team drafted? Because if we are grading how well the team drafted, you obviously can't include those guys. So I think Dunlap and Jackson are easier to include because it's kind of more straightforward pick for guy. But with Adams, are we going to be saying the same thing next year? Does he count as the first round pick again? You know what I mean? So
according to Pete and John, they are. So yeah,
yeah. I don't think that when Kuiper or whoever hands out their draft grades, they're going to be including these guys on them. So in a sense, that's kind of all that really matters, right?
Yeah, I think the conventional wisdom is that you cannot count this towards the draft grade, because the expectation for a drafted player is that they're young, they're under club control for a long time, and they have a really, really low salary cap, so it allows you to spend elsewhere. Obviously, we're seeing the Seahawks have stepped away from that, especially with what they did in this year's draft, but it does have impact in next year's draft class as well. So to a degree, they can't get credit from it a drafting perspective, because they opted not to use the draft in that way. They're acquired talent. If you want to look at an overall roster construct, yeah, you could grade it as part of that equation. But like Ross said, it's so hard. You're really kind of taking a lot away from the equation if you're trying to jam it in, because it's, square peg, round hole kind of a thing. It just doesn't really pan out. I will say, though, that what the Seahawks are trying to do is that they are trying to grab more knowns than unknowns. And I think what they're banking on is that, like Ross said in the last topic, these upcoming draft class, the 2019 class and the 2020 class and the 2020 and the 2021 class, there are more unknowns than knowns. And it's better to invest in a veteran player who has an established history and performance level than it is to bank that your scouting is 100% correct, that their game is going to transition to the pros, because we have seen players that do not look like anything close to what they were like in college, and they just flame out. So you can't draft them, you can't grade them on a draft, but you can look at an overall picture, but that's taking a lot of steps further back in order to do so.
I think ultimately, when you look at the players who end up on the field, if it was worth it to get those players out of those draft picks, in my opinion, count it. I'm in.
The Jamal Adams one in particular is just so hard for me to do that with, because I have a hard time evaluating him. I know
totally.
He had 9.5 sacks last year, but it also means you have to adjust what you think your strong safety is doing to do that all the time, right? Cam Chancellor did blitz constantly. So it's a little weird for me. I have a very, very. Am I the only person who doesn't want the trade? I don't. I want my draft backs back. I want McDougal is fine. I want 2 number ones. I want a chance at the lottery. Sorry, Jamal Adams is cool. I like the sacks. I love watching, dude blitz and get the sack. And, there's another Seahawks record that's an NFL record now. But there's just so much you have to adjust and change to make that happen. And, you got to cover up holes in the secondary. And
he has to stay healthy.
He has to stay
more
healthy.
Than anything else.
He has to, lower his expectations on what he's worth because he just got the record for sacks. I'm sure that's what he's focused on. I'm sure that's what his agent's talking about with dollar signs in his eyes. But every time you blitz, that means there's a hole in the coverage and you don't get there fast enough. Or it means we have to put Brooks into coverage, or it means we drop a defensive lineman, which occasionally happened, right? I mean, it's not, when you do that unconventionally, there's good and bad both. And I'm not, and everybody's like, oh, the NFL draft is a crapshoot, but it says a lot when you think that you couldn't have gotten better value out of 2 number 1 picks and a 3rd for this guy. I mean, it's a crapshoot in a sense, but you don't think out of 3 picks you were going to get an impact guy that also would have left you enough salary cap left over to get something out? Really? That's a little low confidence, man. Like John Schneider.
I don't know. I would contend I would rather take the high draft capital to acquire a Jamal Adams because he's a proven commodity over the luck. Because I know I've done this in the past. You look at previous draft classes and all of a sudden a name sticks out like, oh man, this guy was sitting there at 97 and instead at 80, our team picked so and so instead. It's like, how did anyone miss that? It's like, well, you missed it because they played on a team where they were put in a position to succeed, and they proved the scouts and the other teams wrong. Russell Wilson's a great example. 75th pick overall. He should clearly be the number 1 pick out of that draft class, but people would still say, oh, even with Andrew Luck retiring early, they would still take him number 1. But on paper, there's no way that Russell Wilson wouldn't be a number 1 pick based upon his accomplishments. And I feel like it's really easy to fall into that revisionist history where you look after the fact. And obviously you're talking about thinking about what is that potential of what it could be. I like to approach it as what am I getting now? And I think that's what the Seahawks are trying to do.
You're such an MTV generation, dude.
All right, well, let's move along ahead because this topic is Ross is going to have a lot, so we need to give him some space. But we'll let Zeb go first. Topic number 3. This is the Hawkscast Corner. This is a topic that is on Hawkscast.com. On the link, there's going to be 2 links to these topics specifically. But Zeb, how do you mock a Seahawks draft when they're so unconventional? And this is not specific to you because you and we didn't do a mock draft, but every year the Seahawks always get comments about how they drafted a guy that no one thought was going to be a first-round pick. No one thought they were going to draft Bruce Irvin. No one thought they were going to draft Russell Wilson. That has been a common trend in Seahawks draft going back to the beginning of the Seahawks John and Pete era. Do you feel that there's a reason why the Seahawks kind of draft quote-unquote unconventionally?
Okay, so I guess that's a couple of different questions then.
It's a lot of questions. So take it as slow as you need. Sorry.
Well, I'll start by saying that I quit trying to guess what the Seahawks are going to do in the draft after
you mean
about
you're
2012.
Not dissecting Pete's tweets in the middle of the day trying to figure out what all of his clues represent?
No, I sure don't. The only thing that has been predictable is that we will trade down for more picks. That's a pretty safe bet. Other than that, I kind of, the only things I've gotten right that were not even that I predicted, but things that I wanted to happen and actually did was that we would draft Shaquem and that we would draft DK. I wanted both of those guys, and we did it, which is surprising because that doesn't usually happen for me. But other than that, am so out of the realm of trying to predict what we're going to do in the draft, and it's just sit back and watch and let it happen now. As to why it's like that, why they've taken such a unique approach to the draft and had the way they do things, I don't know. It's sometimes you feel like we're trying to be different for the sake of being different, and just stick with the formula that we know works for the most part. But then they've pulled some magic over the years. So I definitely don't fault Pete and John for trying to be unique, for trying to do something different, for being surprising. And it's been actually pretty entertaining over the years.
Russ, you spent quite a bits of time looking at the Seahawks and opportunities and trade scenarios. Why are they so unconventional? Why are they hard for people to pin down?
The weird answer is analytics. People think that PKO doesn't follow analytics, but actually, if you look at it, the Seahawks were one of the first teams, if not the first team, to have an analytics division in their headquarters. It's just that their analytics works different for everybody else. What they look at is they break down skills different from everybody else. So how they look for fits for their scheme and how they look for players they like is a little bit different. They look at literally almost everything in a different point of view, I think, from most teams. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. It makes things a challenge to guess where they're going, and you're never gonna. It's just an exercise in futility. You sort of pat yourself back on if you think you've got like the right thought process, because they're gonna find somebody you've never heard of, right? So you're never gonna get it right, especially in the first half of the draft. And also, they've got an interesting philosophy that's actually kind of similar to Belichick. He's not really concerned with where you think the value is. If he doesn't think it's going to be there again, then they go get the player. And I'm not sure it's actually always quite as unconventional as we think, because we think that based off of what the normal media tells us and what the resources we have. But they've got resources we don't have. But other NFL teams might. They've got the connections to coaches. They're talking to people we never get to talk to. And so when you see some of those weird picks, I feel like it's usually because they know somebody else was going to pick him. Whether we think it's a 3-round reach or not, they know that 49ers 3 picks later, we're going to pick him. I mean, like, Russell Wilson's the best example. Like, how panned was that pick at first? And it took a few days or a couple of years, but now it's readily acknowledged that, I mean, partly because every team wants to say, oh, I had Russell Wilson on my radar. But now it's readily recognized that, some teams were going to pick Russell Wilson before the 4th or 5th round. So I think it's probably true of almost everything we've done. LJ Collier, for example, people are like, what? That guy wasn't a first rounder. Well, who says that? If he wasn't going to be there by, when we got to our next pick, then they felt they needed him, then, who are we to say? Anyway.
That's kind of an interesting point to think about, because each round, in most ways, you only get one chance, right? You don't have like several chances in the first round to finally like dip your hand and say, oh, I'm going to take this guy. So whether or not you think the value of the player is worth, let's say your 25th pick overall, if you don't pick until 60, you can't take the risk of 35 players get selected instead of that guy if that's your guy and that's who you want, and you don't think they're going to last 35 more picks.
Right. And although you're supposed to take the best player overall, that's actually impossible in a sense, because people talk about like, value, get the best value, but it's not objective. I mean, it's not all the teams are the same. Certain players have more value for certain team. Some players have better value or more value to certain teams than they have to others.
Right. That would be like saying a first round pick the first pick overall is always going to be a quarterback, no matter who you have on your roster.
I mean, quarterback is such a weird thing, but yeah, it's weird. Like if somehow the Seahawks had the first overall pick this year, they'd be dumb to take, to use it. They would have to move back, really, because I mean, Trevor Lawrence is the pick. I mean, I guess you could get it and then trade it again, but then use the discount value there. But yeah, I mean, everybody has value for you, and even position by position, I mean, same position, but just how a player works can have different value. I mean, the Seahawks look for something very, very particular. I mean, cornerback is the easiest, right? They may be changing because they learned a couple things last year, but somebody who's 6'2" and can only run, north south, but has long arms and is really physical, that guy has a lot of value for our scheme. And maybe he doesn't have as much value for somebody who plays pure zone, who needs a lot of lateral movement. So it's not just, we'll always get the best value. Well, there is not just one value. And so our picks look weird because I'm not sure everybody's always aware what the Seahawks are looking for at each position. And it changes.
Yeah.
But I feel like this year the Seahawks may finally start accepting quarterbacks like in the 5'11" to 6'1" range.
Yeah.
Because I think they had some success last year.
Yeah, DJ Reed. He's been great.
So we'll see.
Yeah, I think if you have followed what Pete and John have done over these last 11 years, if you've been trying to pay attention to like kind of their track record and their history, they definitely have a different way of going about it, and it really throws people off because people think of football team in a conventional way, and the closest that I can equate it to is on the book movie Moneyball, there's a scene where Brad Pitt's character says, we need to think of a new way of getting talent, and they talk about statistics, and his scouts are talking about, we need this kind of player, and they just name the player. They don't actually name what they need to replace. Excuse me. What they need to replace is 35 to 45 home runs, 120 RBIs, and 100 runs batted in, or 100 runs. That's what they actually need to replace. But his scouts are focused on, no, you need this type of player or this player. And in the NFL equivalent, that would be like saying, we need to get, an Aaron Rodgers. We need to get a Deshaun Watson. We need to get a DeAndre Hopkins. We need to get, whatever player that you want to talk about. They talk about the player. They don't talk about what that player actually produces and does. And in that sense, the Seahawks, I feel, do the same thing. They're not concerned about the model. Like, what does this player look like? It is, does this player get us 45 receptions, 500 yards, move the chain? Does this guy take up, a really good chance to become a better run grade road blocker, like a Damian Lewis, in the third round? Like, those are the ways they think about it. They don't think about the person or the position. They think about, what does this person produce, and do I need one or multiple people to replicate that, or can I get them in one package? Because that's
when they do that, I think when we talk about like different people have different skill sets, I think they basically go this is gonna sound weird, one step lower, one more basic block down than most teams. They don't look for, somebody who like an overall skill. They don't look for like loose hips overall. They look for actually they break down each thing into a smaller mechanical movement, if that makes sense. They don't look, first step is the great thing, is a thing you can measure. They don't necessarily look for what's his first step or what's his, they look for the mechanics of the first step instead of the first step itself. And so sometimes like that leads them in weird rabbit holes, I think. And that's why you end up with like weird picks. Because when they choose LJ Collier, they're going, he didn't have the best first step, or he didn't have the most of this, that, or the other thing. What they've done is they've broken down a skill set into like micro skills, and they find the micro skills that they think they can teach up the other stuff and produce them to the player they need at that position. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, in other words, like instead of measuring somebody's like 40 time, you break down like his body mechanics out of the break, and you look at his feet, his natural feet placement, or things like that. They don't look at the big skill; they look at the small skill. If that makes sense, it's hard for me to put into words.
I understand what you're saying. It's the equivalent that I can think of is the NBA will always draft size over quote unquote like scoring ability. And the way that I think about it is, if there is a shooting guard or a smaller like 6'5", 6'6" player, or there's like a 6'10", 6 or 7 foot player, they will always pick the person with the size and the body because they feel that you can coach that player to develop. Whereas you can't coach someone to get bigger and stronger and wider because they're already grown, and that's
Right.
the closest equivalent I can think of.
And the Seahawks also strongly value sort of the intangibles, but they make them tangible. If you were, if you're a weird position, but you were somehow still a captain of your team, even in high school, that scores points with them.
Yeah.
That's weird, but like, yeah, if you were like a center or a guard, but you were a captain of your team in high school, yeah, that's awesome. If you had a major illness or a major injury, but you played through it and were successful, so a lot of people like end up on people's injury like warning list. But Pete Carrollson likes that. You played through that injury and you got better, and now you know how to overcome that. If you get injured again, you know how to rehab, and you've shown that you can bounce back. They see it as a plus, not as an injury warning. Sometimes depends on the injury.
Well, I know what I'm going to look for the next time all these Seahawk players say they get drafted. It's like, all right, first off, were you the captain on your middle school chess team? If you weren't, we got words.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's move on to our last topic for the night. Ross, this is special for you because topic number 4. Did the Seahawks limit themselves by not restructuring Russell Wilson's salary for cap relief? This has been something that people have been speculating about all season, and going into the offseason, we were very worried about the Seahawks cap situation, but here they are right before the draft, and they've got a few million to spend, but they could have more if they restructure. What do you think?
I think there's a lot that. I mean, there was the press conference today where Pete Carroll talked about Russell Wilson's going to be a Seahawk for, I forget how he worded it, but saying for a while, for a long time. But they didn't take the easiest step they could have done. Like, to restructure Russell Wilson's contract the way its contract is now, they don't have to even ask him. They can tell him. They can tell him this now becomes a bonus. And when, I don't know if people understand exactly how this works, but basically your bonus gets spread over the rest of the life of the contract. And so you've got some extra money now because some of that money counts as next year, next year. That's the easiest way the Seahawks had to make cap space. They could have done it anytime they wanted, anytime, any place, don't have to ask permission, and they didn't do it. Why? Because that moves money next year and then the year after. So why would you not want to do that? If you think there's a possibility he's not on your team next year or next year, then it's not a good move because it's going to hurt next year. If you're sure he's going to be here this year, but you're not sure next year, then you don't want to do that move because it'll hurt much worse next year. And they didn't do it. So, I think there's some interesting implications there. I don't necessarily think that means, they think they're going to trade him next year. But I think they're thinking, hey, you know what? If Russell takes 42 sacks again this year, and if we only get to the wild card round of the playoffs, and we're playing in a tough NFC West again this year, then maybe Russ is really going to want out, and we don't want to put ourselves in a bad position. So although everybody's playing nice right now and insisting everything's gone really nice, and Pete Carroll said something weird today that they were never in any specific talks about Russell Wilson, which makes no sense because we know John Schneider went to North Dakota. We talked about this last week. Went to North Dakota, had a meeting. He wasn't there to ice fish. Anyway, they didn't convert that salary over to some space. And again, I don't think that means he's gone next year. But what I think it means is it's still a possibility. And we shouldn't discount that. It's pretty serious because they could have used that money. It's also kind of weird because you'd want that money now so they can win now so that he'll want to stay. But if it backfires and he doesn't want to stay, then you don't want to screw yourself next year. So, you know what? There's a reason GMs of NFL teams get paid a lot. It's complicated stuff. Complicated stuff.
I think that was summarized very well. Zeb, do you have any thoughts about this? I know in your free time you like to spend a lot of cap guruing, so.
I think there's probably some good truth to what Ross is saying about them not restructuring so that the possibility is there for next season. I think when Schneider said that there was never any active negotiations with anybody about Russell, that's probably not entirely accurate. It's probably the way he worded it a certain way so that he feels like it's true enough. They obviously were fielding offers, right? Maybe they're saying they didn't take any of them seriously because nothing was enough, but there was obviously people looking into it. So I do believe that by not restructuring, that they're leaving the opportunity there for next season. But also at this point in the season, I don't really know what. I feel like they kind of have done everything they wanted to do. I don't think that there's a bunch of stuff out there that they would need money for at this point. So I think they've been able to get the money that we needed to do the things that they wanted to do. And so I don't think they've limited themselves too much. It's not like they were going after big name free agents and they needed a bunch of money for it. So they're smart. And I think that they're set themselves up to be in a good position going into this season and then potentially into next season.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with both of you. The idea is that the Seahawks are currently monitoring their cap situation, and while restructuring Russell Wilson would add more relief this year, it would make it harder for them in 22 and 23 when Russell is still signed for, if they were to move him, or if the relationship between the front office and Russell just like totally fell apart, which again, I don't see that happening because everyone's playing nice right now, which is, it's kind of enough for me. I think the one thing that you look at though is, does that play into maybe extending Jamal Adams? Does that play into extending some of the players that we might need to? Because that is always a reality, and we don't know what the salary cap is going to look like for 2021. The fact that it kind of stayed the same in 2020 or in this year, it's kind of like hurt a few teams. So we'll see. I think there's just so much that we don't know, and because there's not a player that's out there that Seahawks have necessarily missed on because we didn't have the money to sign them, it's not really a thing that I think the Seahawks need to push towards. Because the last number that I saw, I think they have around $7.5 million. They only need about 3.5, actually less than that, because they only have 3 rookies right now. They only need a couple million for their rookies, for their cap. So there's nothing obvious that I feel that they need to do, which I don't feel that they've limited themselves right now. But I think to Ross's point, I think the greater implication is, what does that mean for Russell Wilson being on the roster in 22 and 23? I think that's the biggest impact, more so than does it do anything for this year, 2021.
Yeah.
This is tangent to this, but against all expectations, if tomorrow, like, the Jets pull it off or they trade for Russell Wilson, what would you do?
I would be sad.
Would you be sad or sad?
I would be sad because I really do like Russell Wilson. I think he's cheesy and corny, and he's, he rubs people the wrong way because they think he's, not genuine. But I actually like him as a person and as a football player, and I think he's the best quarterback Seahawks have ever had. I'd hate to lose that. I
would be sad, but I would also be excited about the unknown, about the future, which could obviously at some point make me even more sad if things don't go well.
I am not excited about Zach Wilson or Justin Fields or Mac Jones or any of those other people if they're the quarterback that's available at number 2. If that's what the Seahawks
really
got.
None of them. You don't think any of them got nothing?
No, because I looked at I very loosely looked at all the quarterbacks that have been drafted in the first round over the past couple of years. There are a lot of quarterbacks that just suck.
Yeah, but that's when the reach is. There's been, I thought the last couple of 3 or 4 years, quarterback drafting has actually kind of taken a step forward. There's fewer first round busts if you got self control. If you actually take the legitimate top 3 people, it seems that it's been a long time since there's been a true Ryan Leaf.
Yeah, so. But that's a pretty steep floor that you're trying to.
Right, but that's the situation we'd be at. We'd be drafting number 2 overall. There's not another quarterback after Trevor that you'd want. We get to rebuild. We get new picks.
App
No?
room.
I mean,
Chaperone?
yeah,
I mean-
what's to say that he's gonna be a Josh Rosen? What's to say that they're gonna be a Deshaun Watson?
And what's to say
Holy-
Josh Rosen's actually Josh Rosen? Has anybody given him a legit chance? I don't think Josh Rosen is as Josh Rosen as people like to Rosen it.
Well, what I'm saying is, as I mentioned earlier, I would trust a proven veteran over a rookie, even though it costs me more. Losing Russell Wilson, I know his floor. His floor is still pretty high.
Last year. Who knows? Man,
Still-
that dude's not getting any younger.
That's true, but I mean, it's not like I don't feel as if Russell has like just completely lost it. Yeah, I don't think his second half of the season was anything to be excited about.
But I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. You're right. I mean, he didn't like age overnight.
Right. It's not like all of a sudden he forgot how to throw a football. It's that he wasn't decisive, which I think is a different issue.
The Giants might have broken him, dude.
Yeah, he might have. I mean, we talked that he maybe got concussed and he's just been playing hurt all year.
I just don't think he's like trust what he's. I didn't think he was concussed. I just don't. I think the Giants, for the first time in like 10 years, I think he was confused, and it looked like the rest of the season he didn't trust what he was seeing.
Yeah,
And I hope that
I
gets
agree
better.
with that. And again, I don't know how much of that is Russell. I don't know how much of that is Schottenheimer. So we'll see what happens with Waldron. But I would not be excited if they traded Russell Wilson for any reason.
I think it'd be dumb as heck, but I also think it'd be exciting times.
Tony,
yeah,
Tony
that's-
chiming in real quick and saying that Russell Wilson brought his own press. And it's like, yeah, the dude's a Pro Bowl MVP candidate. Of course he bought his own press. But yeah, I mean, I get why that rubs people the wrong
But-
way.
Don't you miss humble Russ? Like 2013, 2014, give credit to everybody else. Not worry about the numbers. Just
I like Mr. Unlimited. Don't get me wrong. I like him too, but I preferred Humble Russ.
Yeah, but Humble Russ didn't win an MV Super Bowl at the time. So I mean,
he did. That's the only time he won a Super Bowl. Unlimited Russ doesn't win Super Bowls. He gets knocked out in the first and second round.
Mr. Unlimited hasn't won a Super Bowl. Humble
No.
Russ did.
Yeah, humble Russ won the Super Bowl. You can say it was defense, blah blah blah, but you know what? We won the Super Bowl. And now that we're like throwing the ball around and paying him billions of dollars, we don't get Super Bowls anymore. I don't know.
I
why
love
people-
Russ. I'm not saying I want him gone. I want nothing more than for him to show up this season and show everybody that what he can really do and
He
shut
needs
up
to
all
go
the
back
haters.
to the downtown gym with Apollo Creed.
to go train in
if-
the mountains with the
if
ox
the-
cart.
If the Jets offered us 2 1s and a third,
That's not enough.
I would take it. I honestly
not
would.
enough.
And I would be
No.
happy with Fields
Zeb,
or Trey Lance.
Zeb is the rookie GM in the movie Draft Day who just got fleeced.
I would take it. I would, as a fan, I would take it.
I swear to God, if they gave me like 2 1s, a third, and then I get like some cool dude on their roster, I'd probably take it. I'd regret it, but it'd be fun.
See, and this is where I think that I understand why you think that. And Tony says like humility matters. He still wants Russell on the team. The opportunity, the excitement, the fact for something new is what is enticing. But I feel like people forget with Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll, their floor is like 10.5 wins every year.
I'm not forgetting
but that's
any
also
of
the
that.
feeling.
You got to understand, me and Ross lived through the 90s as Seahawks
Yes.
fans.
Let me
We
tell
know
you.
how low it can get.
Let me tell you about a story about a man named Gail Gilbert.
And Rick Meyer, like we know these horrors. We lived through.
Chicago Bears traded 2 number 1s for Rick Meyer, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that's going to set us up for life, and it didn't.
John Freeze.
Like McGuire's brother played for us.
Dan McGuire.
Dan McGuire, like his brother's out there like on steroids as hell, but like we're like, oh, we get his brother, and like his brother played like 6 games.
His rookie year wasn't terrible. I mean, that's why they still got the first round picks for him.
Rick Meyer? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay. was all
He
right.
actually the end of the first, especially for the time. You're like at the end of the first year, like, oh, he could be awesome. The second year, he regressed, and then like Chicago's like, we can resurrect this dude. Like, yeah, go for it, man. Give us the picks,
Good
and
luck.
we're gonna waste them on nothing. So
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
let's move on.
Anyway.
That's the end of our topic. So let's jump into some predictions. So Ross, first off, what round will a Seahawks player be selected in?
Sorry, that doesn't make any sense. What?
What round? So
What's the
Seahawks gonna-
first?
I still.
What
yeah,
player
I
are
was
they
like,
going to select it in first?
That's what
Because
you can't
they're named
play.
first, second, it's kind of weird. But what round is a player going to be selected in? First, second, third, fourth round, fifth, sixth, seventh.
third. I don't like it, but probably
Third. Ooh, they
Yeah.
got to trade back into the third.
I want him to trade. I want to trade like into back, but still stay. Go look at my first example. They trade back in the second, but stay in the second. I like that, but I think they're going to have to go to the third. Sadly,
Yeah, there's not a lot of picks for them to move back if they're starting it.
I have them at 63, and I think it's a legit shot.
Okay.
How did I do that? Let me go look real quick. While we hear from Zeb.
Third.
Third. Ooh.
This, that, and the third.
That's got to be a high third then.
Yeah, I mean, logistically, if they trade out of the second, if you try and look at the Jimmy Johnson metric numbers, like the highest pick they'll be able to get back into, I think, is a mid to late third. That's probably the odds. So I'm just gonna roll with it and say, you know what, they stay in the second round.
So I have them trading with Kansas City, which actually does sort of make sense. Kansas City has to step over Oakland, Oakland anymore. Las Vegas. What? Kansas City is probably going to need to step over Las Vegas to get some players they want because they have some of the competing needs. So there's a chance we could go down to from 56 down to 63 and still pick up a fourth. So there's your hope there if you want to stay in the second. I think is our best hope.
With that first pick, that first selection, is it an offensive or defensive player, Ross?
If we stay in the second round, it's a defensive player.
Zeb?
Well, then I'll go offensive.
Fight?
Yeah. We should fight.
I'll go
With knives.
offensive.
They're going to go
Offensive.
special teams. They're going to get a long snapper. That's the obvious
Nice.
choice.
They're going to get drafted an
Man,
offensive
what's the
player.
Henry Fold there?
They're going to get Jean-Pierre Lemieux III.
No. I think in the third they could get Melifonwu, cornerback, or they could get that defensive tackle out of Washington, and I can't pronounce his last name.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
I like the guy a lot.
All right, Ross. Over under total players drafted by the Seahawks. Actual players does include Jamal Adams. 4.5 over under.
Over. That's right. That's just two more they need to pick up. Yeah.
Over.
Over.
5. 5 guys. 5 guys like the burger chain.
I'm gonna go under. I'm gonna say that they're gonna get about 4 picks. I don't really like. I feel like everything has been leading up to the Seahawks not really caring about a lot of players in this draft, and maybe that's them just like hiding everything. But I just don't feel like they're excited about a lot of players this year. I read this thing online that said that the number of players to sign with the agent is almost like a third of what it is normally. And I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that players don't want to sign with the agent or agents don't want to represent them.
Asian represent.
Yeah, so we'll see. Ross, over under 2.5 Seahawk total trades.
Over. 2.5? Under. Gosh.
Under. Yeah, lock it in.
Under.
Under?
Over. 3 of them.
You think 3? I'm gonna go under. If they're only gonna get, if I'm predicting 4 picks, they're only making 1 trade. For those lofty of you, Ross, if the Seahawks do trade away, over under 3.5 players traded away.
Players traded away?
Yeah.
Here's the weird thing about us, man. We only have picks because of this and that, the other thing, and then we don't actually have players that we can trade away. It's weird.
They're all on like rookie deals, or they're all like restricted free agents or exclusive
For
rights free
people who are
agents.
only valuable to us, or like we're not going to get rid of. Tyler Lockett was the one person I thought maybe, but then they extended him, so nobody's going to pay for Bobby if you're going to pay Bobby for what he used to do for Seattle. Russ, I think we've exhausted the. Who are they going to? There's nothing there, man. There's nothing. We can't trade any players away.
Okay.
Might trade for a player. Watch that happen. That's weird.
Zeb?
Yeah, we're going under. We're only trading one player away, and that one player is Russell Carrington Wilson.
I'm going to go under. I think if they trade away anything, it would be to get back into like a later pick. I don't know who that will be, but I don't think they have a lot of players like Ross has said. Ross, over under 8.5 undrafted free agents signed after the draft.
Oh, I think it's going to be a ton. This is the year of the UDFA, man. This is going to be a ton. There's a bunch of tons of people like you're interested in, but just don't know enough about to really use draft capital on. We don't have any, so there's going to be so many, way over that.
Yeah, we're going over. We're going to
just maxed out.
Like 4 wide receivers that are like 6'4", and none of them are going to make the team. But yeah, over.
Any dude who played like tight end in Hawaii, like that dude, just like you're signed. Dude. You played tight end. You were in Hawaii. It's cool. You're up.
I think over is pretty generous. I think that's they're going to fill out a lot of the roster. Here's a follow-up question that's not on the prediction. Who's the best undrafted free agent the Seahawks have ever had? Is it Doug?
Ever?
Is there someone better than Doug?
Got to be up there.
David Craig.
We didn't draft Craig.
Craig was all our early quarterbacks were undrafted.
We didn't draft Mudbone.
No, we did not draft David Craig. We didn't draft Jim Zorn.
Jim Zorn they traded for, didn't they?
No, he was on the practice squad of the Cowboys, and I think they just let him go.
Okay.
So then he came to us, and then that's David Craig out of Milton.
Milton. We didn't draft David Craig out of Milton.
No, we did not draft him out of Milton. He actually got a tryout because somebody knew somebody who knew of him and recommended him to the Seahawks general manager at the time. And they're like, "Hey, fine, let him try out."
Well, then he's the best by far.
Yeah, it's got to be David Craig, and then Doug Baldwin probably.
All right. Final prediction: yes or no? Are you going to watch the first round?
Yes. 9:00 in the morning for me. Sure.
It'll be on my tablet while I'm working.
Nice.
You gonna watch it, Sam?
I will. It's 5:00.
5 o'clock somewhere.
Bird's gonna watch it. I mean, I think
like you still want to know what like the 49ers. Aren't you kind of really curious what the 49ers do at 3 and hope they just blow it?
Yeah, but I don't think they will. They're not stupid. Like they're gonna take Justin Fields if he's available, right?
No, they're not. They're taking Mac Jones.
They're gonna take Mac Jones, and my only impression of Mac Jones is just watching him like overthrow after overthrow after overthrow.
But that's why they should take Justin Fields. Justin Fields is the mobile.
I know they should, but I think like that dude is just like has got a Superman crush on Mac Jones, probably because his name is Mac Jones.
I mean, that's a great football name, to be honest, but
it's not a quarterback though name, is it?
It's a cool sports name. There's a lot of branding opportunities.
Boxer name.
Yeah.
Well. In this quarter, Max Jones. What? Mac Jones?
The Niners are going to send Garoppolo back to New England, and they're drafting Mac Jones.
They're going to send Garoppolo somewhere, but Belichick doesn't want him because that dude's like too injury prone.
So
I don't know. Belichick seems to want him.
Trevor Lawrence, number 1. Zach Wilson to the Jets, and then the Niners are going to take Mac Jones. Then where is Justin Fields going to go? Is he going to go 4?
If I could revise my mock, somebody may move us. I think that the Falcons should take either him if he's available or Trey Lance at 4. Some people don't think they have that enough foresight. And I could see the Patriots moving up. They don't usually do this, but I think Belichick has done everything different this year. So I could see the Patriots moving up to 4 and then taking Fields or Lance.
See, you need to update your first-round draft chart. You don't have When do you have Mac Jones going?
I have him going. I forgot. I had him kind of fall a little bit.
You have So you have Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields to the Niners, Trey Lance to the Falcons.
Yes. Oh, I have number at 7. I have the Patriots trading with the Lions and taking Mac Jones there at 7. After the Dolphins take Kyle Pitts.
We'll see.
I do not want the Niners to take Fields.
No, I think they're going to. Well, I don't think so. I don't know. I can't tell, man.
Shanahan likes his pocket QBs, man. I don't know.
It's so weird because they traded up and they gave up so much to take that spot. So normally that indicates exactly one guy, but this time it seems to indicate they're comfortable with a couple different people. And usually there's like a definite leak by now, but I don't see one.
I'm sure they know which guy it is by
But here's the thing, though. Would you want to be in the position where you actually say, oh, yeah, I'm comfortable with any of these players? That seems like the worst thing to do.
I mean, going this way without tipping their hand is actually going to backfire on them if it doesn't work out perfectly. Because, if somebody else works out and you weren't sure or you thought they were both fine and you picked the wrong one, that's just bad.
Right?
If you just committed early on, it's just really bad. Is this? Yeah,
I feel like this has a chance to burn them because if they take whoever they take at 3, if they end up being the bad, like if someone of the 2 quarterbacks that are selected, whoever is not that 3rd pick for San Francisco, the 4th and 5th quarterback, if they end up being anything remotely good, that's going to set their franchise back so far. And I don't know if you'd want to be in that position. Like, wouldn't you rather trade up to secure the best player you could? Like, maybe that's the thing. They could only get as high as 3. But if that's the case,
they might think that Fields, or they might think that they might think that Fields or Jones is just as good as Wilson. I don't know if I think Fields is better than Wilson myself. I think the Jets should take Fields, but they're not going to. It should be. I should do a mock that should be's and just be like all on my high horse.
Right.
Because it should be like Lawrence, Fields, Wilson, or maybe Lance, then whoever's left. But, yeah. I had the Bengals taking Jamar Chase, the best wide receiver, but then they took out they put out the picture of their new uniforms, and there was like an 18-inch scar on Joe Burrow's knee, and I was like, the reality of that set in, and I changed it to a tackle.
Well, that is our podcast for today. Gentlemen, it's time for some shout-outs.
Dude, shout out to Birdfinger. That's my dude.
Birdfinger with some great, beautiful designs for the website. Go to hawkscast.net. It looks as pretty as it does because of Birdfinger.
Shout out to Birdfinger and Tony and Luigi and everybody who made my Dynasty startup draft successful. We started a Dynasty small money pay league this year. I've never run one before. I'm pretty excited for it. All sorts of elements that don't come into redraft leagues. It's pretty exciting. And it went off pretty smoothly, particularly with Tony and Luigi's help. But yeah, everybody showed up. Everybody was awesome, and it was cool. And I'm excited for that. So thank you, everybody.
Nice.
Shout out to Mario. It's not fair that Luigi gets love if Mario doesn't. Shout out to Peach. Shout out to Buttercup. Shout out to Bowser.
Hey, I just realized I had an uncle named Ugo. That's got to count for something.
Shout out to Uncle Ugo. Shout out to Felipe, to Colin, to Rena, to a lot of people that have helped with getting hawkscast.net online. When you get a chance, go to the website. Shout out to all the people that are active on it. Dome, Acer, Chris, Kiwi Hawk. You guys are doing great. Keep it up. We're the Hawkscast Podcast. Check us out on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast, Seahawks Forum. Go to the website. Listen to our podcast. Let us know. Join us. Chat with us. And we wish you a go Hawks and have a good draft.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go draft.